That's not here. No idea.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no. It's great we have a band for you, John.
I know. I've already been talking to the football team. I was out on the quad.
Oh, you saw them? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah,
Yep.
they're getting everybody rallied. Yeah.
I invited them to come.
Yeah, they're busy too.
Yes, they are. I gave them a preview of the presentation and they liked it.
Good. Yeah, so I think we're trying to remember, we may have an engineer on the football team, which is not usual every year for us. And then we definitely have engineers in some of the other sports. There's gonna be one night for the team for some special things like the third and the fourth quarter. Victory bell.
Nice.
Yeah, brand new, so I don't know if you should call it a tradition. So you're
Yes.
right.
Yeah, football players were asking me when I attended San Jose State. And I said it's when dinosaurs roamed the world.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So the question is, how did the football team do while you were here? They definitely had good years and not so good years.
Yeah, we were top 20. We had Gerald Wilhite,
Oh,
who was a
okay.
candidate for the Heisman Trophy.
Okay.
So we had good days. That's when we would beat Stanford periodically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And John Elway's sister went to San Jose State. She was in my bowling class.
That's a really fun fact.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And that I bowled with her
Yeah.
for one of my PE classes.
Wow. Yeah. I wonder if she ended up in that family business of car dealerships.
I have no idea.
My parents, my dad is effectively Coloradoan and my mom lived there for graduate school. So they was raised as a mom. Yeah.
And so you'll do an intro and then.
Yeah, I'll do an intro and then I'll sit back down.
Great. Yeah.
On down.
count of how many people are online?
I am not sure. We just don't know. We know how many folks are online. Yeah, we had some issues getting the link distributed. Oh, okay, that's great. All right, so I think I'll go ahead and get started with the introduction. I want to thank everybody for coming. This is our first in-person Silicon Valley Leaders Symposium in many semesters. I'll just leave it at that. And today I'm really proud to welcome back an alum who will be kicking off the series this semester, John Quist, who is Senior Vice President of Operations and Quality of Impinj, which is an IoT company which is based in Seattle. He travels frequently to San Jose, which is actually how we met, and it's really great to have him here. So after earning his Bachelor of Science in Industrial Technology at San Jose State, John began a career in the semiconductor industry. So there's a lot of great careers for folks in the semiconductor industry, and his career has lasted over 40 years. John has held a variety of operations positions, both in the US and in Asia. And then during his 18 years at Cypress Semiconductor, John managed business units and factory operations. He joined Impinj in 2006, and as in his 16 years as SVP of Operations and Quality, John has been responsible for growing the supply chain operations needed for producing billions of low-cost and high-quality units per month. John has been a frequent speaker at industry conferences targeting lead-free and green issues within the industry. John was identified in 2005 as a pro to know by the Supply and Demand Chain magazine due to his support of lead-free conversions in the overall supply chain. So thank you everybody for coming, and please help me welcome John Quist.
Thank you very much, Dean Furman. I'm honored to be here as a San Jose State alumni. You're going to see in this presentation, I'm proud to be an alumni, and San Jose State gave me the foundation to have my successful career. And so hopefully you'll see that in the presentation. I do have 3 goals today. First goal is to keep everybody awake here. And so to do that, I've got a pop quiz in the middle of my presentation. So all of you will be required to take out your phone and raise your hand for the pop quiz. And whoever gets the 2 questions correct, maybe it's the first one, if there's more than one. I brought a $100 hoodie, San Jose State hoodie, I just bought at the bookstore. So there's prizes to motivate people to stay awake. My number 2 goal is to have my children say that this presentation is better. I previewed this presentation with my children, and the earlier rendition that I used, they said, not good enough, not powerful enough. And you don't have any engineering diagrams. How can an engineer not have engineering diagrams? So I revised it, and hopefully I'll get a thumbs up from my children. And then the bigger goal of the presentation is to motivate all the engineers at San Jose State to change the world in a good way. And that's very important. And San Jose State wants you to do that. As I go to the second page, I think I'm going to go to the second page. It worked a second ago. There we go. The San Jose State Engineering School, the mission, you can read that, but there's key words there: socially responsible engineers and leaders. And I'm actually trying to accomplish that with this presentation, but I've also worked on it, I think, my whole career. And we have a lot of work to do. All the engineers that are going to work on fixing things and using data and building better products and processes and companies and institutions will want to do this for their career. So it's not when you're just at San Jose State. And my 2 examples are, I worked at Cypress Semiconductor, and the CEO there, Dr. TJ Rogers, brilliant engineer, but being socially responsible was very important to him. And Cypress was consistently the #1 fundraiser for Second Harvest Food Bank in pounds of food, we would deliver more pounds of food per person than any other company in Silicon Valley. And at Impinj, Dr. Quist, again, a brilliant engineer and socially responsible. And he promotes many, many opportunities to give back. And one of the things that Impinj just won at, and the last time, was a race to the top of the Space Needle to raise money for cancer research. And Impinj, a small company, 300 people, we beat the Amazons and the Microsofts and raised more money than any of those companies. So being socially responsible and being a great engineer, they go hand in hand. And I'm hoping for this presentation to continue that for the next generation. So my professional story, and this is sort of why Dean Ehrman invited me. And so we're going to talk one page about my professional story, but then we're going to talk about the social responsibility side. And so professional story, again, proud alumni. I live in Seattle, so I got a hoodie. I'm wearing my San Jose State hoodie. And a lot of people stop me in Seattle saying, "Go Spartans." And already mentioned, industrial technology gave me a great foundation. One of my favorite classes here was with Dr. Seth Bates, material science, and understanding the crystalline structure of different materials and the tensile strength and other parameters was a very good class that I took with me my whole career. And San Jose State, all of you can be proud. Look at these numbers as engineers. #1 transformative university. Wow, that's fantastic. And I'm going to talk about my transformation story throughout this presentation. #4 in undergraduate engineering program. Fantastic. Give everybody a good foundation. Gave me a good foundation. And #13 in diversity. Really important. I think this, and when I was here at San Jose State many decades ago, it was very diverse, and that foundation gave me the ability to talk about diversity issues, even though, as you can see, I'm an old white guy. And so a lot of this presentation, maybe you'll be hearing things from an old white guy that you haven't heard before. I'm hoping that it impacts you in a good way. So Cypress, I was there for 18 years, and Cypress was famous for being, one of the reasons it was famous, the last major semiconductor company to have manufacturing in the United States. So in Silicon Valley, we had a big factory here, many buildings. And over the years, we had to move it to Asia to be competitive and remain viable as a business. And we were the last one to do that. So my job at one point was moving the factory to Asia. And so today, of course, everybody's talking about, hey, we need to bring computer chip manufacturing back to the United States. So very relevant. And there'd be a whole hour-long presentation on that, but that's for a future meeting. And then Impinj, 16 years, same thing, semiconductor operations. And Impinj is one of the leaders for RAIN technology, which is the supply chain technology using RFID. Makes operations, logistics, anything, transaction-free shopping, makes many things efficient. And we're shipping billions of units every month. The Impinj products are world-class, top-performing products. And so there's a whole hour-long presentation on that. But again, today we're going to talk about social responsibility. And I did grow up in the Bay Area, so I know 280 very well. And here's where, since I'm going to talk about things that I'm not technically the expert at, although I do use experts like Mitch Shepard, CEO of Human Inc., to help guide me through my transformation story as I work on being socially responsible. But since I'm not the expert, I need a disclaimer because I'm telling stories that go back decades and I'm not the expert and my children were fact checking me. So again, I need to cover my responsibility with my children. So here's my disclaimer. If any of you have seen the show, you know exactly where this comes from. So I am going to try to tell the truth, but if I make a mistake, I'm hoping my children will give me a break. So, personal story. And here's the only somewhat engineering diagram I can fit in this presentation, Venn diagram. So I succeeded after I didn't have any. So first there's my family. And so my family is very diverse. I am a minority in my family being a white male. And it's a vast majority. If you look at my family, my wife's family, my uncles and aunts, cousins, nephews, nieces, I'm a very small portion being a white male. And so I have seen things growing up that help me see what white privilege is like, because I'm white. And when I see that my family members don't have that same privilege, I think there's a problem. And so, going back to the San Jose State engineering mission, being socially responsible, I think there's a problem when I see inequities. And so family is a big part of this Venn diagram. And then San Jose State. San Jose State, again, gave me the foundation, and not an engineering class, but my American Studies class, reading Democracy in America, written by Alexis de Tocqueville from France, talking about the experiment in the United States of democracy. What's good, what's bad, what needs to be improved. And so studying that for a full year here at San Jose State, it's looking back, we're still in the experiment. And I think there's things that we can improve. And so again, the engineering students, you're going to be fixing things when you graduate and improving things and monitoring things. So always have this in the back of your mind. And then of course, values from all other environmental and other influences have led me to, two big documents for that would be the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. And if I have to take all these things in this Venn diagram and boil it down to keep it very simple, two things for me. My key values are equal rights and equal opportunity. And in this world we live in today, some of these rights I feel like are being taken away. So, for instance, men get to decide what they want to do with their bodies. Nobody tells them what to do. But with the reversal of Roe v. Wade, many women cannot decide what to do to their bodies. And so why do I have that right and a woman doesn't? It doesn't feel right to me. So, having that as a backdrop of my personal side, let's walk through some Silicon Valley stories, since that's the title of my presentation. And here's an amazing story. And right out in the quad here, got this monument. Tommy Smith and John Carlos. And I was growing up during this period. And when they protested at the Mexico Olympics, they were the two most hated men in the United States. They were getting death threats. The press just beat them up. But they were pointing out the same things that I've just talked about. Things aren't equal equal rights, equal opportunity. And so they were protesting that. And that's why there's a monument here now. These are the heroes, because they stood up to try to make a point and make a difference. And today, in Silicon Valley, the famous equivalent would be Colin Kaepernick, 49er quarterback, protesting at the national anthem. And again, trying to make a point that things are not equal and not equal opportunity. And I think the problem isn't that we have athletes protesting. The problem is 50 years after this protest, we still have the same problem. So again, as engineers, we're going to fix things. We're going to rework processes and systems. So when all of you are graduating, we've got some things to fix, because obviously we're still having protests. And even though we talk about it, it's here today. I was invited to be a jury member at the court system, and this is just a year and a half ago. And you have to fill out a card about yourself. And on my card, I said, I have a concern about bias and racism in the judicial system. And so when jury selection came around and the judge was asking questions, and I actually made it onto the jury, and we were about to start the trial, but the judge asked me, so Mr. Quist, why do you have a problem with the judicial system? And I said, Your Honor, I think we have an example of bias in this room. From what I can tell, I see 12 jurors that are all white. And the defendant was a young black man. And so the system that allows for one demographic to not be represented at all in a very important situation like a court case, I said, that's an example of bias in our system. So the judge said, thank you, we'll recess. And the next morning we got the note that all the jurors were let go. So I don't know what happened in that case, but hopefully the jurors that they did get represented more a mix of diverse backgrounds. So that's how it's happening today. And that's why there's still work today. Silicon Valley, how could I not talk about Silicon Valley stories without talking about this TV show? Fantastic show. It is 100% true. When you watch that show, don't think that the crazy personalities or the crazy ideas or the crazy money, it's all true. I have worked with every one of these characters, everyone in my 40+ year career. So it is a funny show. And unfortunately, this graphic shows one of the problems of Silicon Valley. Where are the women? I don't see any women in this graphic. Since I'm a white guy, I'm going to guess that 4 of these men are white and 1 is diverse. Even that's a little concerning. But for sure, our education systems need to change to get more women engineers and diverse engineers. And our companies need to change to promote and support diversity in all levels of management. And so I'll highlight 2 people that are very important in Silicon Valley that you might not know of. So Dr. Lisa Su CEO of AMD. And she took over when they were not in good shape, one of the biggest semiconductor companies in the world. They were not in a good place. Stock price was down, revenue going down, brain drain. She took over and has turned the company around. So all of you should Google her on your phone so you can follow that amazing career. And then Jody Shelton is CEO of the Global Semiconductor Alliance. So all semiconductors in the world, companies in the world, are generally in this organization to promote and help advance the semiconductor industry. And Jody has run that organization for a long time, right from the beginning. She founded the group, essentially. So that's two very important women in Silicon Valley that you should know of. That's why there should be, like in this graphic, women also. Another view of Silicon Valley, and of course, there's great things about Silicon Valley. So we'll talk about some of the great things, and we'll talk about some of the not so great things. The technology on Silicon Valley is very positive. It's progressive and it's innovative. The products, the iPhone, for one. We'll talk about more about that later. Amazing product, changed the world. And so processes, technologies, companies, products, amazing. Everybody wants to work here. And the use of stock options was a progressive, inventive way to motivate employees that had never really been done before. And that was used in Silicon Valley to create trillions of dollars of wealth for companies and employees that were in those successful companies. So there are good reasons to be here. But there are things that we need to work on changing. And so the equity, not all stock options were given equally to all diverse groups. So that's a problem. And financial institutions in California and the West Coast, you know, back when I was still a young man, they were redlining. So you can see the red line here. Financial institutions did not give money for people of color to live in certain neighborhoods. So if you needed to borrow money for a house, then the bank would not lend it to a person of color to live in certain neighborhoods. They were segregated into other neighborhoods, like East Palo Alto. And the generational equity loss for that process is still being felt today. And then representation, we talked about women, not enough women in Silicon Valley on the last slide. Back up. Thank you. The representation is not equal across all diverse groups. And so I'm going to give an example on this next page. And here's the pop quiz. So everybody, you can get your phone out. You can get ready. So let's raise your hand. I'm not sure how to do the hand raising for the online people, but it's not a trick question. Who is credited for inventing the iPhone? Raise your hand. I want to see. I think more people should be raising their hand. There's movies made about this guy. Movies. And so somebody yell out his name.
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs. So most people in the room know Steve Jobs. So there's an equally amazing engineer. Every cell phone has a microphone and a receiver for your voice. And the engineer that invented that technology for all smartphones and for all baby monitors and for all hearing aids, he has over 250 patents. Billions and billions of his devices have been shipped all over the world. So who knows him? Okay, I'm seeing one hand, two hands. So in the room, I'm going to say 95% of the people knew Steve Jobs, but only 2% of the people knew this engineer. So I've got two hands. You were the first one. So his name is?
Dr. James E. West.
Very good. James E. West. He's a Black engineer. And so my point is, we know the CEO of Apple, a white man who's very famous and he innovated many things, but we don't know the Black engineer that is in even more phones than Steve Jobs. And James E. West. The post office. He insisted, so he sort of fought a biased system, even internally to his house, and became one of the greatest engineers in the United States and in the world. And so movies should be made about James, just like movies have been made about Steve Jobs. And so back to my core values, equal rights and equal opportunities. I'm hoping that I pointed out some areas where we still have a lot of work to do. And again, engineers are being created here at San Jose State. And so we need to go out in the world and continue to work on these things, because we need to do better. And so what do I do? And I don't have all the answers. And the list is much longer than these four things. But I try to talk about these issues, current events, with as many people as I can. And so when Dean Ehrman invited me to give this presentation, I said, I absolutely would like to do that. I support minority-owned businesses. Let's make sure we transfer funds and money to make it more equitable for everybody. I research, read, try to expand the horizons of what I see, and I support diverse philanthropies. And so MUST is a Seattle-only organization, but it uses education as the foundation to turn around the cycle of poverty. Identifying young Black men in high school that are most likely going to drop out, pairing them with a mentor who is a Black college student, so the high school student can see a successful Black student. And then those college students are paired with coaches in business. And so I'm a coach for that organization. It's a fantastic organization. And something like 75% of the kids that were destined for dropping out of high school end up going through college in this program. And then there's also corporate actions. Companies do many things. Many are helping. We just need to do more. Diversity Action Committee at my company, Impinj, I'm part of that. And here's where it shouldn't only be the diverse groups that are working on it. You've already identified me as a white man. Many white men need to help with this change. And training and education at work, I have taken many courses and studied and tests, connecting with people, appreciating different cultures, appreciating what's different and unique. Let's celebrate that. And then there's many tools that companies can use. And so my question to end the presentation is, what will you do as you're becoming engineers and going out into the world? You've listened to my sort of transformation story. So what will your transformation story be? Thank you for listening to my stories.
We've got time for questions. Folks have questions for Joanne.
So I recently completed an internship with the Oakland Department of Transportation, and we actually worked on like equitable solutions to do things to fix the problems of the past, like redlining and everything. But really, what can we really do to fix those problems? Like, how can we change all those things? Because if the thing that we're doing now, why isn't it working?
Yeah, and again, you didn't hear me say I don't have all the answers. I only know I want to make change in a positive way. And so I'm actually here asking all of the engineers that are going to go out in the world to work on these issues in their fields. And there are so many problems, issues, things we can improve. I don't think I could answer your specific one, but it's going to take many of us to work on this over time and not give up. We need to keep moving forward and trying to improve things. And it's going to take time. It's not going to be easy.
That's a really good question.
And I didn't know the answer.
Yeah.
So I don't know, this may be slightly different from what you mentioned. So you talked about Steve Jobs and James E. West. So the question is, I mean, the way you said it may be not what you intended, is that he did not get his due credit because he was a black engineer. But I do not know so many other, I don't even know who did the cameras and so many other things in the phone. So I'm not sure how much of it is to do with race at all. So in other words, I mean, should we pin everything on race?
And of course, there is that discussion. Everything is not about race, but I would argue that it's a placeholder that does happen in other situations where, I'll say at work. So since I'm on the diversity action team at work, many people that are diverse will say they don't get the same amount of time to speak their ideas and their goals, where certain demographics, and I'll say, since I'm a white man, white men don't allow for the diverse group to speak up and be seen and be heard. And so I agree, not everything is race, but I've also seen where it's, again, not equal the amount of face time and promotion and honoring successful people that are diverse. We tend to go to the white male or the beautiful woman to promote them in the news, for instance.
Yeah, other questions? Yeah, so I have a question about, you mentioned a general education course that you took here, so your American Studies course. So I'm wondering what were some other good nuggets, either from that course or from other courses that you took either on the engineering side or on the GE side, that you took with you beyond SJSU?
Yeah, and I don't think I'm going to identify a specific course, but again, in general, because San Jose State is very diverse, and I appreciated that diversity, as you saw from my family also, and then at the university. I've always been able to have tough conversations with people about situations in the news, situations about inequities between demographics and different people. And San Jose State allowed me that and gave me that foundation where, again, even as a white man, people would look and say, you've had white privilege all your life. Yes, I have. I probably wouldn't be here giving this discussion if I was a non-white man. And so just having that realization is important, and San Jose State gave me a lot of that.
Great, that's good to hear. Right, other questions? Yeah, in the back.
So I had an opportunity to work in industry, and there's been a huge discussion about promotion. And do you believe that a diversity and inclusion team should work with managers when deciding who to promote? Or should it all just be based on qualifications?
Yeah, and so great question. And many companies use management as the decision makers. And if the management is not diverse, then there's a problem. But there are tools and processes that are available. And whether it's 360-degree evaluations of employees, so you get more of the peers and both above and below the team member for getting feedback on performance and pay. And having groups like a diversity action team involved with that, those are all good things. It's different at every company. And that's why, as all of you engineers graduate and go to these other companies, don't be afraid to have those conversations. Good question. And so, for instance, many of the members helped me with my presentation. So again, me talking about the challenges we have and looking for diverse groups within my company to help me go through my transformation that I've been going through my entire life is an example of bringing people that are different together. And so I think that's the first thing that the team does. Of course, there's actions to go help and support and change processes that seem to be biased. And whether it's the hiring process or the equity and pay process or the promotion process, it's trying to identify where there are biases and then change them, break them down.
Any other questions for John? Last chance? All right, so I think with that, let's thank our speaker again. Folks who didn't get a snack on the way in, feel free to grab something on the way out. And then we have 2 more speakers in this series this semester. So we have a founder of a consulting company, Jobin Parkour, as our next speaker. And then our final speaker is Maria Hinton-Swart from Lockheed Martin, who's actually a learned engineer. She studied something else and then came over and became an engineer by default of her career. So looking forward to seeing you back. Please tell your friends. Make sure you send it to us about it. Hey, Eva.
Because we actually stepping down on the one, so I
Yeah.
something.